statewide. It's not just for the coast. And we have two kind of photo recording tools activated. One is called Flood Watch, which is for tracking flooding across the state, and the other is called Storm Reporter, which is documenting storm damage. And we're in the process of developing more reporting tools. One is going to be for marine debris, so a way that people can report, large debris in the water. This is more out of our New York City location, and we have the capability to develop other reporting tools as well. So why do we want to? I am very flood focused, but keep in mind it's also storm damage, and so when I think about why do we want to document floods, we know that storms are increasing in frequency and severity, and there's not a lot of publicly accessible documentation during and after weather events. A lot of people take photos and they'll upload them to social media. The news media often takes photos, but then it's like, if you ever want to go and try to track that down, it can be challenging. And then there's this other piece where, because storms and floods are increasing, our baseline conditions are changing, and the current data that we use for decision making, like in planning and engineering design, it doesn't consider these changes that are happening. It doesn't consider climate change often, and so we feel that photos can be a way to complement these data gaps. So, like I said, I think of it from more of a community engagement and planning perspective, but what we've learned is that it's also really it's interesting to people that are in emergency response, which I'll talk about in a little bit. And so I just wanted to open it up and hear if, in any of your work, if there's other reasons to document flooding and storm impacts that you can think of. I know you said you're a natural resource educator.
Yeah. Primarily focused on 4-H though.
Okay.
The Tioga River flows through Cortland, and a lot of times it floods. So I think that would be a good reason to document.
Yeah, definitely. And even just MyCoast can be really powerful for just documenting smaller events that are happening more often too. And so that getting at that frequency of how often things are flooding, even before it's a huge disaster.
I would just say something that I have observed personally as well. I work on some other things, but personally, that I've observed, I live on a hillside in a city of Ithaca, and one of the things that happens more and more frequently when there's not really even flood events, but heavy storm events, is road damage. Asphalt getting ripped up, and just making transportation more difficult. And I always go out and, when it happens, take a picture. and I'm most interested in having my municipality be aware that's knows where to come and where repairs are most needed. But I could imagine that being used, not sort of only in a response mode, but also trying to say, hey, there may be some problem upstream. That's because most of the time that happens when one of the culverts upstream gets clogged up. So just kind of helping management and planning and prioritizing personnel within a municipality. I can imagine this scaling up in some ways, but also helping individual municipalities know what to do.
Definitely, yeah, that's a great example. And there's a lot of smaller, kind of weird, impacts that we're not even fully aware of that are happening, and these are big things to document.
Also, I think, and you may be talking about this later, but we talked a little bit in a prior session around Eden and APREP about the disaster, the Ag Sentinel, and agricultural damage as a result of flooding or other natural disasters, natural events. Specifically, water through fields. As there are many fields that are plowed in such a way that it's hard for the casual observer to see that that's actually part of a riparian system and it's been flattened out. But when that heavy rainfall comes, there it is. You can see the creek plain as day, washing tons of soil. I think those sorts of images, they come on the news and then they disappear. And even groups like Soil and Water Conservation Districts and others don't get that kind of data visually. So I think that would be another really excellent use for this tool.
Definitely. Yeah, and I meant to ask this earlier, but who has, I mean, you have photos on your phone of like, you know, the road damage, but does anyone here have flood photos on their phone in their album right now?
I do.
I know I do.
Lots of them.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I can't really say much in terms of the US, but I mean, for example, in Belize, when it comes to, especially with, you know, proper infrastructure, I guess planning, that's something that's definitely lacking. I mean, just recently we had a tropical storm that, you know, went through Belize, and I mean, it's the same thing every time when there's a lot of rain. You have a lot of houses or buildings built right along the river's edge, and they get completely swallowed. And the same thing in terms of agriculture as well. I mean, they had a lot of farmers that lost a lot. I mean, we saw pictures, you know, aerial pictures that just is being completely flooded because it's right along the river edge. And I mean, even though as the country continues to develop, it's just there's not proper plans to avoid these issues. And worse, you know, with climate change and us being such a small country, it's not a whole lot we can really do there, but just try to adapt. But type of adaptation isn't really happening.
Yeah, yeah, that's tough, for sure. Yeah, all right, I'll move on. This is just showing, you know, floods are really costly. It's the most costly disaster in New York State. This is a little outdated. This is showing that between 2011 and 2019, every New York county had at least 2 flood disasters, and about 2/3 of the counties had 5 or more disasters. So we can, and like I said, we've had a lot of disasters since 2019 as well. So often when I'm giving these talks, I'm talking to community groups, focusing on the community science side of these things. And so just some other ways that we try to, you know, describe, you know, when people ask, well, why should I contribute? It's really a way to share your experience. You're kind of building a data set with your neighbors. It's that hyper-local data that's often left off of, you know, flood maps, engineering studies. It could be a blocked storm drain, or maybe some development happened and there's a new type of flooding happening. And then just that, you know, a picture is worth 1,000 words, so they're very powerful visuals. The origins of this project really started in New York City, in the Jamaica Bay area. There's a few communities that live right on the bay in the low-lying area, and they experience chronic tidal flooding. So it's basically every month, on a full moon or a new moon, they'll get this flooding, and then if there's a storm, that can bring storm surge, and of course now there's heavy rains that bring, you know, stormwater flooding to New York City. So anyways, back in 2018, one of our Sea Grant extension specialists down there started to build this program with the local people. It's called the New York City Community Flood Watch Project. And that really was the inspiration for bringing this statewide, because through that project, they were able to advocate to the mayor's office of New York City to get a flood sensor network installed. And so now they have real-time monitoring on certain intersections that flood frequently. They use the photos to understand where to install those sensors, and now they still use the photos to understand kind of what's going on, because there's only so much that like a sensor can tell you. But anyways, these are the types of things that having a data set like this can lead to. So I just wanted to give them a shout out. And then a more recent example is we have an emergency manager down on Long Island in the town of Southampton. He learned about MyCoast from some of our early outreach, and he's really taken it and run with it. He uses it, he's trained his staff to use it in the field for field reporting, instead of just emailing and texting photos. He keeps MyCoast open in their emergency operations center, and he also will put out press releases requesting that community members send in observations as well. So this is kind of one of our champions, you know, early adopters that we like to tell people about, because the tool has been really helpful for him. He spoke about this. We have a recording online. It's in this presentation, and I can send this around too. So how does MyCoast work? Basically, you upload a photo, and then it's connected with a bunch of data. It's placed on a map. It's given a unique URL that's like pretty simple instead of like a really long, crazy one. And then it's connected to other types of data. So if you live in a county that borders a tidal area of New York State, you'll get a tidal overview. Every county gets a weather station overview and river. And if you live along Lake Erie or Lake Ontario, the tidal will be replaced with lake level data. And so the reason this is helpful is it's just a way to kind of catalog these photos by location, date, time, and then it helps you understand what was happening. So this event, Keith, in the last session you talked about December 23rd, 2022 was a blizzard in western New York. But on my end of the state, in the Hudson Valley, Long Island, New York City, we had a huge pulse of storm surge that occurred, and we haven't seen it that high since Hurricane Irene back in 2011. And so you can see here, the observed is the red line versus the predicted tide. We got an inch of rain in the past 24 hours, but that's not what was accounting for this level of flooding down there. So it just kind of helps add a little bit of context. And this this information is not perfect, but you know, it can be a good starting point. This is just another example of a photo report. This was in New Paltz, so some inland flooding. And I've just blown up here on the image. You can see the nearby river gauges. And this is like an area that has a lot of river gauges. This isn't common across New York State, but you can see they were at flood action and flood level. And for the rainfall, there had been over 2 inches in the past 24 hours. So one of the best things about MyCoast, I use this feature all the time, is actually looking up all the reports on the website. And I'll demo this in a minute, but you go to the search reports page, and then you can filter over here by location, start date, end date. Those are kind of the common ones that I use. And then you can also, once you get the reports filtered to where you want, you can download them in a CSV file. You can bring it into GIS, and you can also download the photos as well. We also have a resources section on the website, flyers, fact sheets, newsletters, and recordings. I brought a bunch of fact sheets over there, so feel free to just take them with you if you want to use this in your outreach. And we rebranded, we have a green version that's meant to appeal more for inland communities, because when you see the other flyer, it says MyCoast right at the top of the page. And if you live in, Tompkins County, that might not resonate with you. You might just walk away immediately, or Cortland County. So we made these green versions that have flood watch at the top of this, so that there's kind of this little more inclusive. But it's still a challenge, because you still got to download the MyCoast app. So to become a MyCoast volunteer or start using it, you would download the app. It's in your app store right now. It's free. And then you register using your name and email, and then you can start submitting photo reports. So if anyone's interested in downloading the app, playing around with it, adding photos is a great way to kind of understand how it works. And then whenever we give these talks, we try to make a point that safety first, always. Never put yourself in danger to get a good shot. So any questions before I go into this, or as I go into this kind of demo?
Just some, I guess technical questions. I'm jumping way ahead to.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to use this for, Ag Sentinel,
Yeah.
as you and I have discussed. Would there be any problem just having a different URL? Just like a shell URL that would not have the, you're saying there's a little baggage with MyCoast.
Yeah.
What stops us from having it be HTTPS agsentinel.org.new.york, and it just points you to this.
That could be a good way to, for if people were uploading photos through the website.
Yeah.
But the big part that we can't is the app is called MyCoast.
Oh, I see.
So it's
The name of the app itself.
But if you're training people on it, then that's a little easier than asking, I guess, the public to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So it just kind of depends on like who the audience is as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
It makes me think we should find the money to just recreate it with a different name. Same exact stuff, just rebrand it go a little further than you did with the inland version.
Mm-hmm.
It's all the same stuff. The background in the app, it would be all the same. It's just rebranding the name and the image, really.
Yeah, and we'd have to talk, because it's like, this is a private company, so we have to figure out how that would work with them.
Sure.
But, yeah.
Interesting.
So this is the homepage. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, could you just talk a little bit more about who uses this information and how it turns into something that is a database that informs action and behavior.
Yeah. So I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit. So this has been active for 2.5 years now, and we've spent a lot of time promoting the tool. And so this is more on just like how we have over 1,300 photo reports, over 866 registered users from 26 counties. And we have some use cases. I think the emergency manager is the most powerful one because he's using it in their daily operations. Another example is the National Weather Service is a partner with us, and sorry, my slides are getting a little messed up here. So we work closely with the National Weather Service New York City office with that winter storm Elliott, that blizzard that was in western New York and the storm surge on the eastern end. Because it captured the storm surge as far north as Albany County, they just didn't know that type of flooding was happening as frequently as it is up in the northern part of the estuary. So they've actually changed their flood warning procedures, and they're trying to communicate better with the Albany office. And then, I'm just going to skip ahead to, one of our partners is the Portland Onondaga Federation of Kettle Lakes Association. They they have a storm response plan, and they have decided to use MyCoast as kind of a repository for their photos. And so they're starting to populate that. I printed out some of the photos that they've added to MyCoast from past storm events back there. And so they're thinking of using it in their mitigation planning. And I recently spoke to the Harlem Bronx River Alliance. They have a lot of funding for green infrastructure down there, and they were excited about using this tool as like prioritizing, locations for that, to kind of collecting like where is the flooding happening the most, and then also monitoring stormwater, so those types of things. But we're still in the process of collecting those use cases. One thing that we're working on this year is Tompkins County is updating their hazard mitigation plan. So we're working with the county, and I should say this is mostly Kristen Hitchka from the Water Resources Institute is working with them to do an outreach campaign with communities to collect photos of flooding and storm impacts in case it can add to their hazard mitigation plan. So the types of floods that maybe weren't declared disasters but still need some attention. This photo's from, we had a meeting with the municipal historians of Tompkins County to see if they would want to be partners in uploading photos of flooding for their communities. So it hasn't taken off to a large degree, but we kind of have some plans in place to try to get this used. I should say Resilient New York studies. So these are local flood analyses where community engagement is a big part of that, asking the community for photos of flooding. And so we're going to try to partner with them for the kickoff happening in Orange County and then Lubna Creek sometime next year. But it's just not required. In other states, it's required in certain planning processes, but in New York State, it just hasn't been, we're home rule. You can't really tell people to use the app. So I hope that helps.
Who in other states, I'm not quite sure, how could you tell people to use it?
Well, they can tell the municipalities to use it where we can't because of home rule here in New York.
Right, but I mean, I thought this was mostly for citizen participation.
Yeah, it could be either. I mean, so for we're using it as citizen participation mostly because we can't require it, In Massachusetts, they have a storm reporter tool. They actually started the storm reporter, developed it with the MyCoast developers, and they have teams that are trained to go out and do damage assessment using MyCoast as their number one tool.
And that kind of model, David, is what I'm thinking for Ag Sentinel. Every county cooperative extension association would be trained in this, and that would be their data collection.
I can see that.
Yep.
So would it be helpful to just look at
that'd
the
be
website a little bit?
Be awesome.
This is the homepage. If you scroll down, we've got some information, some frequently asked questions just about, where's the data coming from, what is it used for. Each tool has its own page. This is also where you can add photos through the website. We also have something called CoSnap, but it's only at set locations. It's like a phone cradle. So I'm just going to not talk about that one today. But this is the search reports page, so I have that open here. And when you get to this page, this is where you can filter. It's always going to be filtered to Floodwatch and Storm Reporter to start. The flooding cause, that's a user-generated field. Not everyone uses it, so I don't really like to use it for filtering. But I do use counties and communities frequently. And then start and end date if I'm looking for a particular storm.
So there's not a watershed filter.
No, but that could probably be added. One of the challenges with this tool is they use Google geography locations, so it's and that's why the data is also at the county level, because I can't give them a shape file and say filter to this.
Yeah.
It's got to be assigned to the geography via Google, and often those are incorrect and that type of thing. So that's one of the limitations.
Okay. Well, maybe instead of shapefiles, I'm just thinking about that watershed. If there was a tab filtering not for GIS info, but for the names.
Yeah.
Just the name of, for example, I'm thinking of Canoga Creek. If you were generating that through your users, and they were there was a field for them to add the names of water bodies, then maybe we get it that way. At least you could filter by the name of the water body, at least.
Yep, especially if people are trained in that.
Yeah.
Yep. So I just pulled, this is what a photo report looks like. This is the URL, and this was taken up in Monroe County. So this is, a Great Lakes one. It's bringing in lake level data. Sometimes you can see if it's a SAISH event. We have one photo that shows a really cool SAISH event. That's when the water level goes up and down because it's slashing back and forth like a bathtub. But not the case here. This one, this person really added a lot of information, which is great. You can add comments. Looks like they might have some training. And then they selected these fields that it was cause of flooding with storm drain, and it was on lawns and vegetation. and this is just showing it on the map. Here's another one from Baldwinsville in Onondaga County. This was after a big rain event. Right here it says a little over half an inch of rain in the past 24 hours. And these are the fields they selected. So this could be modified, you know, if we were to develop an Ag Sentinel photo report, all these fields could be, you know, customized.
Can I ask you a question on that screen?
Yeah.
If you choose one or the other between Flood Watch or Storm Reporter, is that siloing those data inputs, or they talk to each other in those two baskets?
It's a different photo report, so the fields are different. So I don't know if it'll let me on this computer, but if I hit add photo for Flood Watch, oh, I gotta log in. I don't know if I know my
The test.
yeah, right.
I can think of a lot of good research applications for this too.
Yeah, we have and New York Sea Grant, we do fund research, and we have a research RFP coming out soon, and we would love someone to, you know, do research using the data in this app.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I need my password. So if we go to add photo, this is what the photo report forms looks like. You would just browse it on your computer, and then these are the different fields where you can add comments. So it's pretty straightforward with this one, but with the storm reporter, so I have to add a photo before I can go on to the next page. So this is, I'm using like this classroom computer,
Mm-hmm.
so I don't know if there's any like, I'll do this. So this is set to, we developed these impacts with, from like a coastal perspective. So you would hit report impacts, and then we have these different fields. So impacts to roads, so you would hit yes, and then you can get more specific on like how passable they are. You can add comments. We have marinas and harbors, buildings, hazardous materials, and yeah, and so on.
Can we go back one
Like up to,
where you said, where you entered the picture and it allowed you to select some there? Data, photo, time, report impacts. Okay, and you said yes, and then impacts to roads.
and then it gives you this, the way it's set up is like you would say, it defaults to no impacts, and then you would check if there were, and then it gives you additional options.
So theoretically, in this report, you could just add a section on impacts to agriculture,
Yeah.
and then have your checkboxes.
That could be a way to do it as well.
What are the other ones that, other than impacts to roads, that if we go down further, that are already here?
So
Buildings.
marinas and harbors, buildings, hazardous materials if they're present, beach, shoreline, and then coastal structures.
Okay.
And if there's a response happening. And then the final screen, it asks you to, normally it would pop up automatically, and you just want to confirm that it's reading in the right location from the photo. And there is the option to, this is more for our community scientists, but you can hide your name if you don't want your name to appear next to the photo. So I'm not going to submit this one, but that's our simple storm reporter report. Okay, I think that's all I wanted to show on the website. I guess one other thing I'll show actually is our resources page is right here. So this is where you can download these different PDFs of outreach materials. So this is what it looks like in the app. Another limitation is when you open up MyCoast on your phone, there'll be a tide chart there. So again, not super, interesting if you're living upstate, away from a tidal region. But then you just hit this yellow button, add report, select report type, and this is where I can imagine if there was an Ag Sentinel version, it would pop up right here. And then you would go through adding the different information and then hit submit. Just a little bit more information on flood watch. So it's tracking flooding across the state, and that can be any type of flooding. It can even be like basement flooding, riverine, stormwater, whatever type, wherever there's water where it's not supposed to be. And then the storm damage is more documenting damage from wind, water, ice, or snow, and damage to infrastructure or the natural environment. And some people use this for flood photos as well. So I've already touched on some of these, but one of the challenge and limitation is the name, and that it shows that tide chart. You also can't search photo reports through the app. You can really only do it on the web page, which is unfortunate because if you're in the field and maybe you want to see what's been flooded near you. And then you can't upload unless there is cell phone service, and so for a lot of our rural communities, that's not a great thing. They do say that it'll save the report and then you can submit it afterwards, but you can only do that for one report. And then the environmental data, like the tide, weather station stuff, is not perfect. So I already started to touch on this. Just from the past 2.5 years, these were our top 5 events and the number of photos. So that big winter storm, where we saw a lot of storm surge, we had 112 that covered 15 counties in New York State. And then earlier this year in January, we had just a ton of rain in January that also had some storm surge. And then right before that, last December, we had another big event. And the last 2 are just high tide events from the city. So I think there's something there too for being able to kind of characterize these big storm events a little better at the state level. And that's something we're interested in doing in the next year. We're going to be hiring a student to help us kind of, give little reports on what we saw where. And also linking that up to dishes, they have a Mitigate New York website, a new version of it that's coming out soon that kind of starts to do this too. And so we think that there's some good synergies there as well. So I already talked about this, Winter Storm Elliott. This is just a rainstorm from December 18th of last year. Just wanted to show when you compare where our MyCoast photos are, and then you look at a one-day precipitation estimate over the area, just starting to combine data that way. And these were some flood photos from some of those rural areas where a lot of that heavy rainfall was. Talked about that. And yeah, I think that's all I had. And so we started to get at this stuff, but
Great. I still have a question on if I'm imagining people going to this before there's a specific Ag Sentinel version. I mean, we may start to socialize this out in the world. If they go onto the flood report and they add in the information there, there's some data going to some central repository of flood reporting. But if somebody else in the same event were to use the storm reporter and we were wanting to pull from here, let's say, all of the information, is it easy for them to cross over?
yeah.
Okay.
So if we go back to that search reports page,
Mm-hmm.
you can filter by, it always defaults to showing both.
Okay.
reports.
Okay. This answers the question.
Yeah, and our emergency manager on Long Island, he uses these filters to get to his community. I think it's Southampton. But this is a way that you can kind of look for reports that way too.
Okay.
He has a few communities that he
But it's storing everything in the aggregate, and then you can filter it out. It's not already parsing those according to flood reports and storm reports. Okay, that's helpful. And the one other question, I guess, the macro finance question is, who did the first one? Like, which state did the first of these? And then what did it cost? And then
Yeah.
what did New York get involved? What did it cost for New York to get in the game?
Yeah, so it started in Massachusetts, and the way this project came to be was we were interested in bringing like the New York City program statewide, and through our national Sea Grant network, we got connected with a Sea Grant person in Rhode Island that used MyCoast, and then people in Massachusetts, and we decided we wanted to do a research project to understand best practices for this type of thing, and then we were going to decide what tool to use. So we worked with those two states. We did a ton of research. You know, a lot of people will use like Survey123, or there's a couple other platforms out there that you can use, but what we found is there's a lot of time that goes into managing the data on the back end, and less time to be able to analyze it, use it for outreach. So we decided to give MyCoast a try. We got some funding from that grant, and then New York State Water Resources Institute got the other half of that. I think it started out cheaper, and they've had to raise their prices over the years. MyCoast is a 2-person operation. They're very accessible. You know, I could text them right now, and they'd get back to me. But right now, it's $25,000 a year, and they're increasing to $30,000 a year for a subscription, and that's managing all the security backups, you know.
That's them maintaining the whole MyCoast. Okay.
Yeah.
Both on the web and the app and the whole bit.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so we've decided next time we renew, we're gonna sign a 5-year contract with them because we get a big discount. It's like kind of buy 5, get 1 free.
Lock it in.
Yeah. And we also, our New York City partners just built a website around MyCoast, so we can't let it go now. It started as a pilot, but now we're like, okay, we're gonna lock in and just try to, you know, see where this goes in 5 years.
Yeah.
So it's good through 2030. We used to not be able to say that. So.
Well, that's good in terms of thinking about investing on our side here
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, and I should say too, we have funds for the first 2 years. We don't know how it's gonna work with Cornell exactly on like approving a 5-year contract when we don't have the funding, all of it up front, but that's where we're looking for partners and funding, is to kind of cushion those later years and try to spread the funding around from different organizations so everyone contributes a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
State aid, various other state and federal agency use or interest in this?
We did a lot of, like I presented this at the New York State Floodplain Managers Association conference. FEMA's a big fan. We're actually getting some funding through our cooperating technical partnership with FEMA right now. But we're really looking for the state to invest in this, and we just haven't found the right people at DEC or DISHES to want to fund it. But we're kind of like, we're gonna start in the new year of kind of like, we're at a point where we're, like I said, kind of looking back on the past 2.5 years, and we're at a place now where we have a lot more experience and we feel like we can sell the capabilities a little bit better, so.
I'm going to speak with Julie Suarez and our partner at Ag and Markets that we report our data into through the Ag Sentinel, which is very, very rudimentary compared to this, and see what opportunities might exist there.
Yeah, and it's, in order to develop a new photo reporting tool, you know, we could go through a process of piloting it with like, you know, the people that are gonna be using it, and just try to get it right in that way. And I'm available to help with all of that.
Based on your presentation, I don't think we have to actually do much different. I mean, just really making a place that people in cooperative extension associations, you were in that last session, those folks in counties need to be able to easily go on this MyCoast and say, oh, right there's Ag Sentinel, and it just takes them to basically all these reporting things. They can just, there's not applicable. I mean, if it's dunes and things, they'll be taught through the training, just ignore that stuff. Just go to the stuff that's relevant and germane. So now that I've seen all this, I don't really see there being a need for a whole rethink. I mean, really, it's just a couple little
Yeah,
inserts, and it's pretty much there.
yeah, that's great.
And that would allow us to then say, all right, well, we're going to spend $30,000 on, you know, this being available for the agricultural purpose, and you guys can figure out which year that goes to.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that'd probably be the best way to proceed.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, and you gotta think too, yeah, like training, outreach, getting people, like using the tool. But yeah.
Yeah.
So just, I was gonna ask you, and I think you were heading in the direction I was hoping you to go, but like, I can imagine a number of different kinds of organizations and or even agencies like wanting to sort of use this tool. How would you make the case that Sea Grant and or Extension are the right places to be working with this?
So one, I should have mentioned Department of State as well. When we started this, they were actually wanting to develop their own version of this for their GIS gateway. And I think it just comes down to that. Maintenance is a huge, you basically have to hire a person to maintain the website, the app, that type of thing, and all the data. And it's just nice that it's outsourced in this way. Also for this type of data, since it's public facing, it can be nice to have that third party kind of person so it's not, I think it adds a level of protection for the agencies in some ways as well. Because they're often the ones that have to like act, to make decisions on flooding and funding investment and all that. So I think that could be a talking point as well. But on the other hand, we also, we're happy managing it because I think Sea Grant, Water Resources Institute, we have people working at the local level, and we're, community outreach, community engagement is what we do, and this is, a great tool for that as well.